So yeah, wait, I forgot I need to do.
Oh,
Yeah, because you are a producer in LA.
I like those glasses.
And if it's, thank you, they're from H&M. And if I learned something about or something I presumed going to LA was that there would be a whole lot of people wearing sunglasses indoors.
And was there?
Disappointingly few. It was just me. Yeah.
It was
No,
just
I
you.
didn't. But 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 that's kind of where I wanted to start. That is kind of where I wanted to start with asking you. Hey, first of all, thank you so much for being here
Of
and
course.
doing this with us. And hello and welcome everybody to the Avatar Country live stream featuring me, Johannes, and producer extraordinaire and generally cuddly lover boy, Jay Ruston,
And
with
his
whom we have, yeah, and Spike the dog. Let's yeah, let him sleep. And you, of course, you've been mixing our album since Hail the Apocalypse. You produced Avatar Country and Hunter Gatherer. So that is, that is what we have done together, so to speak,
That's a lot of albums.
professionally. Mm-hmm.
Four records, right?
But yeah, but I kind of wanted to start with the whole LA thing, jokes aside, because we, as you know, we really were hesitant on the idea on recording in LA. We had a ton of prejudices in regards to what it would be like, what the vibe would be. We had this idea like we are this Scandinavian metal band, and LA is full of musicians who make money and whatever. So what is LA to you? Because you're not from there. You're a northerner in your own right, being Canadian and all.
LA is, I guess, if you're a musician in North America and you play rock music of any sort, it's a good place to be. All the record companies are here, all the managers are here, but they're also in New York, they're also in Atlanta, Nashville. So I guess it just depends on what you're looking for exactly. But in regards to simply business, it's a very good place to be. It's certainly helped me. Literally within months of living here, I was working on records that were going to come out that people would actually hear. And not that that wasn't happening in Canada, but certainly more difficult to be from any small populated country. You're going to have a much harder time breaking through that mold unless you discover an artist that is brilliant and you've produced them and helped them in their career, and that launches your career as a producer. And absolutely that does happen. But just for me personally, moving here was a really good move, just because I started meeting people like crazy, and it was the connections just kind of domino each other. You meet one person, they introduce you, and so on and so forth.
And I guess that's what the definition is of a place having a scene, when the business actually located there. And
yeah, and the rock and roll scene never left Hollywood. It changed and became something different. But the business is still here. So regardless of whatever the scene was doing, whatever style of music you're doing, the business side of it is here, and those are the people you need to get to.
And therefore the resources of it, that the certain type of studios and equipment, like you can find if there's one town that has it all in terms of just stuff you might need when recording or doing anything in entertainment show business, I guess there's a shop that has it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the amazing part. Rental, guitars, instruments, studio equipment. I mean, you could literally rent an entire studio in pieces and set up in a house somewhere, which many people have done, go record in the desert or whatever you want to do. So certainly that side of it makes it very appealing. The traffic sucks and there's a lot of people, but the weather's nice all the time, mostly.
Yeah, that's yeah, I didn't get used to that. I never would. You need some darkness, rain, fall, misery, and something too long away from, I think, to be truly creative. But that's just me. Now,
No,
we
right.
just
right.
We so we like we said, you have mixed 4 albums with us, of which the 2 latest ones you also were the producer. But what do you consider to be your job description? Because you're not just a producer in that sense, right?
Correct. Yeah, I kind of do 3 jobs at once, and a lot of producers do 3 to 4 to 5 jobs now. You know, if you look at producers from say the 50s, 60s, 70s, even the 80s, there was an engineer who ran the console, there was a tape operator who ran the tape machine, and there was a producer who generally didn't touch any gear. He was sort of the director of a film, say. And it was more of an overseer, like a George Martin style, where he'd be in the suit, the engineers were in the lab coats. You know, there was a technical team and there was a creative team, and the producer booked the studio, booked rehearsals, um, helped the band arrange music, all that kind of stuff. So those jobs are now kind of all mixed into one, and now you include songwriting into that, co-songwriting, arranging. A lot of producers write, they play instruments on the records, and certainly that happened back then, but not as prevalent. So I would say my job now is I engineer records, I mix records, and I produce records, and all 3 are very different jobs. Engineering, just getting great sounds, making sure everything is technically good on tape. Sorry, Spike's coughing.
Yeah, I hear it.
He's an old fellow, he's got heart disease, so he's on a lot of meds. He coughs sometimes.
He can cough. He's earned the right, the old man, to cough.
Yeah, he's 17, so he's earned it. So, and then, you know, the producing hat is more of the creative, help the band, you know, guide the band and help them pick songs. And, you know, as we did for months and months and months, going through your demos and bouncing ideas off of each other. And then mixing, of course, is like not even in the same category. It's like a totally different job, totally different atmosphere. It's just, it's creative, but also very technical. It's also kind of half the production. Like I would say I do half my producing by myself with nobody else in the room. Making decisions during the mix is part of producing.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, so it evolved. Your profession, your field has evolved. Is he okay?
Yeah, just making sure.
Yeah, good. Here. Your profession, your field has evolved to become this, like you say, this mashup of many different roles. Now, you know, and that is, I guess, out of necessity, just how the recording culture, the music business, and everything has slowly changed into that, you know. And of course, we as a band like the thought of paying one guy instead of
3,
instead of 4 yeah, 3 or 4 guys, and damn your heart or loss of hair or whatever, you know. But in a perfect world, would you have it any other way though? Because like you say, if half of your production is while you mix, then, you know, half of that process of the creative process is there, you know. I don't just want to write and record the songs. I want to play them on stage. I want the whole thing. And I would presume it's similar where you're sitting.
Yeah, if I'm producing a record, I absolutely want to mix it. And I think it makes the most sense because we're in it from the beginning, and to hand it off to somebody else to mix can work. And it does work all the time because people send me records to mix that I was not involved with, which is a totally different mindset, of course. But because I also focus on mixing, I always mix my own productions. Now, when you said it's a good idea to have just one person and then not 3 or 4, the good thing is especially here in LA, as you know, when we went to Sphere, the recording studio we used, there was a team there to assist us, a very professional, amazing team of engineers and studio techs who made our job as creative people extremely easy, because we don't have to worry about that technical side of things too much at all. There's engineers there to make that happen.
Yeah, but you still play an engineer role in there, in the sense of that you sit by the console, you turn the knobs, and you also go and plug things in and out and move things around.
Sure.
That's because that's the thing. What the fuck is a producer then? You know,
honestly, anybody can be a producer. You can have absolutely zero music knowledge whatsoever, but if you have an opinion and some level of guidance and maybe a bit of psychology where you can like walk somebody through a difficult moment or whatever, you can be a producer. And I've worked with producers over the years that were very hands off, very not technical. They just knew music and they understood people. And that's how it was for a very long time. A lot of producers were not technical. Some of them were former musicians. And there's a producer that I worked for when I first moved to LA named Peter Asher. And in the 1960s, he was in a duo in England called Peter and Gordon. And he got signed and ended up becoming part of the whole Beatles camp. He was part of Apple Records and he helped them form their label. They signed James Taylor. And Peter moved on from being a musician and became this prolific producer and a manager as well of James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt and many other artists. And he was not an engineer at all. He didn't touch gear. He didn't touch consoles. I mean, at least not much. And it just, he always relied on great engineers, and he always had great engineers around him for 3 or 4 decades. So I was very lucky to spend a few years with him making records and seeing that the golden age of how records were made. And when 5 musicians would walk in the studio never even hearing the song before, being handed some sheet music, and in an hour later we had a finished song of an entire amazing band. So pretty amazing experience to see how records were made, which kind of turned me into how I make records now, which, as you know, is one song at a time, because so many records now are piecemeal together. You know, do the drums for 10 days, do the bass for 5 days, do the guitars for 2 weeks, do the vocals for 2 weeks. So you're constantly just every day doing the same thing. But records were never made like that. Records were made, you walk in, you worked on a song all day or 2 days or 3 days or 2 weeks or 3 weeks in Fleetwood Mac hours till the song was totally done. Then you moved on to the next song. And that's just how records were made forever and ever and ever. And I think the advent of Pro Tools and computers, which allowed you to literally change anything at any time and fix anything at any time, changed that process. Not for the better, in my opinion.
No, right. That's the thing, right? That is that brings me, because we had recorded live before we worked with you, but we hadn't done this particular method. Like, but so I wanted, what was your first impression of Avatar, of us? You know, what made you want to work with us?
Your manager sent me Hail the Apocalypse, the song that you guys had recorded, and I believe it was just a rough mix. And he said, what do you think of this, and could you do something with it? And within a second and a half of hearing that opening riff, I immediately heard uniqueness. It was heavy, obviously, which I love. And then the drums came in and the bass, and then of course your vocals. And I really hadn't heard anything like that. Metal and extreme metal isn't really in my background. Metal, yes, classic metal, Iron Maiden, Metallica, Pantera. But a lot of the newer metal and more Scandinavian metal, which you've introduced me to, and a lot of it I do love, I wasn't that familiar. So to me, it was something very new. But even then, now that I've gone back and learned about a lot of these bands and heard all this music, you guys are still outside of that sphere, still unique. So I just heard that immediately, that I'm like, okay, I haven't heard this before. And that's what turned me on immediately. I was like, this is so original, so unique, really heavy, but also extremely catchy and memorable. And then of course you guys did a brilliant video, and the whole record's great. So it was just a lot of fun to work on, and I love that it felt live. And of course I found out later that you recorded it mostly live. So, and I just think that makes a big difference in the excitement and the energy of a record, which I would include the new album in that, because we did it mostly live. So you can't replace that energy. And it's hard to make metal
exactly.
Yeah, and it's hard to make metal records live because they're very technical. So when you play metal live, you get away with a little bit. But in the studio, the microscope reveals everything, and it's really difficult. So, hats off to you guys for all the rehearsing and preparation for this record, especially because when I listen to the tracks back and hear how tight it is and think that we didn't have to go in and fix things a million times, and it's amazing to me.
Mm. Yeah, that so there's some blood, sweat, and tears into that for sure. And that was a huge hunter gatherer. We made sure to have more time for writing, for rehearsing it, to be in the studio. Everything was done more spread out for hunter gatherer compared to Avatar Country, which was a huge difference for us. But and that were there any other big differences for your experience work doing hunter gatherer with us as opposed to Avatar Country, if you compare those two experiences?
Yeah, I think, well,
The obvious one would be the live recording thing, of course, but is anything else standing out?
yeah, I mean, we did record Avatar Country live. We went back over and redid some stuff and did a little more of a traditional kind of patch up, fix up, only because from what I remember, at least, you guys didn't have the time to prepare for that album like we did. And also at the time, I think we were planning on maybe only doing an EP, and it sort of evolved into
Yeah, the project grew while we were working at it, and yeah, it definitely everything happens so much faster than from the whole idea, from the whole fuck it, let's have some fun into entering the studio was not many months. Like, we write all the time, more, off and on. Everyone can come up with riffs, but there's always that starting point when we're like, hey, show me what you got, and I'll show me yours, and you show me mine, and from there we start actually writing an album together. And I can't remember exactly how long, but I bet you it was not much longer than 3 months,
I
maybe
think
4.
it was quick. And even when we were in the studio, you guys were writing some ideas and coming up with things. And so that was a very different process, comparably speaking, because Hunter Gatherer, we went in knowing every note, really. There wasn't
Yeah.
much that was going to change other than, ideas like, hey, this might be better like this. But yeah, I think the process was different in that, well, we were also in your hometown, we were in a smaller studio. It's just a different vibe. But it was our first time actually recording together, and for me it was good to be there. I liked being in your environment in Gothenburg. That was really fun, and I love the city, and it was
Correction, dude, you were in Lindome and recorded. Hey man, I thought you were woke.
True. So, but yeah, I guess that felt really good. I enjoyed that time immensely, and it was a great experience. So then making this record was so much easier because we all knew each other so well, and it was just walk in and create. But you didn't really finish why you had a chip on your shoulder about LA.
Why I had it?
Well, just because you said, what do I like about LA? And I told you, but you didn't really evolve on why the band was so against it initially.
Well, prejudices, really. Just that LA seemed to be a lot of, that I jokingly described as full of musicians who actually make money on what they do. But this commercial fluff factory with, I don't even know now, because this self-importance, doing it for all the wrong reasons, people full of themselves, and people kissing each other's asses and all that probably to a certain extent is still true for that, as
that
but then there's that other side to it, of course, like that it's a city where creative people go to find work, which means it's a town full of creative people. And it's a town, because it has such a, not just the music industry but entertainment in general, Hollywood obviously, I feel like the environment of just the few people interacted with, because frankly we all slept in bunk beds inside the studio and I went outside twice. So you mean my experience still from there was limited, but then we have played it there as well. But it's a city that I feel like they get artists, like it's a legit profession, and also, and everyone has met 100 people way more famous than I am. So it's strangely grounded, in that sense, at least again, the people we interacted with in the studio there, and everyone is in a band, so you become peers. I guess there was a lot of positive experiences in that, and again, due to our lifestyles and stuff, the fact that the the great variety of vegan food available was great. Again, as a vegan, it's a great city to get fed in.
You're telling me.
I didn't say anything. And
Yes,
it has all those things.
You're right about that. The opportunity to meet people that not only are successful, but sometimes even people who influenced you or you looked up to, and having the opportunity to work with those people, you're not going to get that living in a small town in Kansas. You're going to get that if you move to LA, and everybody seems to move here once they get some level of success. So that is a really interesting experience. And you're right, they do become just regular people, and you realize they're just musicians and creators, and they're striving for the exact same thing as everybody that isn't famous yet. So you're right, it becomes a peer situation, and it's nice. And you meet some incredible people, and you meet some not so nice people too, and that's fine. Everybody's different.
And I feel like, in my experience in general, like just with bands and stuff, that the friendliness increases the higher levels of success you reach in general. And you'd always think, I think, believe from the outside, that it would be the opposite. But I feel like the meanest things said by us and to us were when we were cranking out demos in the underground at home with other competing with other 17-year-olds about that opening spot at the local, to be the local support for whatever came through town. And that was much more mean-spirited than when you reach a certain level, and that's not even high, there's more respect, I feel.
Yes, I would agree.
Better understanding what it's about.
Yep. No, for sure. I mean, I've met some incredibly successful, famous people, and they were just amazing, just lovely people. And that's maybe you're right. Maybe at some point it just grounds them, and they just realize that just being nice to everybody is helpful. It's a pretty simple concept.
Exactly. Did you the segue to the next question on my paper doesn't work at all, because that's exactly, but it's fine, because we're talking about the differences between hunter gatherer and avatar country. Mm-hmm. And that leads me to, that was supposed to lead into I don't do this full-time, people. But did you have any particular articulated goals for yourself when going in with hunter-gatherer, going into the studio to do hunter-gatherer with us? Again, we fall into that. We talked about doing it live, but we had our articulated ambitions. We knew we were making a darker album. We knew that having worked with humor, we didn't want any humor this time. We knew all these things. Did you come in with a little, bag of ambitions like that are yours when you meet up with a band?
Yeah, I certainly, and I had discussed some of it with you and the other guys as well, which was I wanted to make a record that, first off, sounded amazing. I'm always just been a fan of great sounding production. But I also wanted it to be unique, and I wanted it to feel live, because that was the plan coming from you guys. And I wanted it to be aggressive, but not trashy sounding, because a lot of aggressive metal records, and even some of the influences that you played for me, you were like, well, this doesn't sound the best, but it gives me a feeling.
Exactly.
So there's an energy there. So how do I capture that energy, but still make it sound really pro? We, as a joke, we always say, oh, that sounds expensive.
Exactly. But you and I especially spoke about that a lot while you were mixing the album. Yes, I guess we use the word sweet spot, but a Goldilocks zone between exactly those things, that there's a vibe, and then there's the actual sound in a more literal sense of it, and how you want to make the music you play justice in quality of sound. But there's a trapdoor there where you go for where it could become too slick and too clinical and take the edge off. And especially that you're able, how somehow the fact that you are able to make things sound very objectively, good, everything in its place, you know how that works. uh, and it's just this ongoing challenge, because how far do you want to push that when on the other side of that, it's so nice and crispy clean that it doesn't even feel live anymore. And it's a weird, we went back and forth a lot.
You're right, and that's such a difficult thing, because if you go back, say, let's go to the 80s, and when metal was really peaking, early 80s, new wave British metal, then you got Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax here. And I think at that time, all those bands were striving to make the best possible sounding record. They weren't trying to be garagey or hip sounding. They were just trying to make a great recording that was heavy, that sounded pro. They all loved AC/DC, Mutt Lange, very slick production, but still kept the spirit of the band and the heaviness. So, fast forward to now, it's easy to make any sounding type of record. So the decision is, how do you combine that? How do you make it slick, but also aggressive? And it's a fine line, and it's difficult. That's what makes mixing so difficult, because you can easily make something very clear and slick and clinical sounding, as you said, but to make it just sound natural and have life and just feel like you're there when the band is playing is difficult to do, even though that's what you have in front of you. It's the band playing. So I think that was my goal, at least, was to make it still sound like what I heard when I was sitting at the console in the studio and you guys were out in the room playing the song. I want it to still sound like that.
Yeah. Should we take some questions from people? Because they are rolling in like crazy. And the first one comes from, these are all, they choose their own usernames on avatarcountry.com. Thank you guys for being with us. And so I will butcher all these pronunciations, because this could be from Aruja or Aruja. Who knows? But anyway, Aruja wants to know, how do you approach the sensitive task of discussing changes and rearrangements with artists?
That can be very sensitive, but it depends on the artist. You, as a singer, if I say something to you like, I don't really like that, will you try this? You immediately just do it. Whether you agree with me or not, you at least try it. And sometimes we come to the same conclusion that, hey, the original idea was better, let's just go back to that. Or we decide the new idea might be better, let's live with it, or whatever. And sometimes we ping-ponged back and forth a little bit and so on. So that's good. We're both open to hearing each other's ideas on the subject.
Yeah.
In the total opposite scenario, where once an artist writes something, it's done. That's it. There's no changing. And I'll voice my opinion. And if it's met with a flat out no, then there's really not much more I can do at that point. I can push harder. I can put my foot down and say, this has to change. But in the end, it's their record, their name's on the front, not mine. And that's their decision. So you have, at some point, you have to decide where to pick your battles and when to kind of decide what's worth fighting for. And there's certain things that I've pushed hard on that I just think don't sound good or could be better. And, you win them sometimes and sometimes you don't.
But this is something that I was so open to try anything. I think is something that we as a band learned on this journey called life that led us to work with you. Because we would have, of course, in the early days, you could have discuss for hours if you wanted to move a note or a hit on the drums and just argue about it. And then when we started to work with Tobias for Black Walls, basically, we were sitting there and he would just, well, I have this crazy idea. Try both and let's see what sounds the best. And it's, and I feel like, because sometimes we do come in, as you say, the artist comes in and have a very specific idea and it feels done. But even if I'm 100% certain about that, that should mean that my idea can stand the challenge to be tested against your suggestion. Like that would be the maximum antagonistic position I would have against, there's never there's never a reason not to try something else.
Right.
Because
I always say give every idea 10 minutes, because you
yeah,
never know.
and some ideas, I guess we gave days like that. We let them really
Yeah,
sink
totally.
in.
Let it percolate.
Yeah, because some stuff you do that is, some, yeah, oh, this idea that you've been trying to figure out to fit into a song for 10 years, let's try this thing I came up with this minute and compare those two, and like, well, and so sometimes it needs to digest a bit
Yeah.
as well. Here's a question for me, so sit back and relax. Because yeah, here we go. Nimue Myrk, maybe, is asking if there was a Lovecraftian influence on God of Sick Dreams. Beyond the nightmare inspiration, I've got that vibes. And I don't know where that person would ever get the thought that it would be any Lovecraft going on in what we write and do. But I think in the sense of that song being, yet another angle on dealing with oneself, and that the God of Sick Dream, the seed of that nightmare, the root of those nightmares and fears, is me, and kind of facing, yeah, it's Lovecraftian in the sense that I face myself as one of those unspeakable, indescribable evils. So to that extent, yes, but I didn't read any specific Lovecraft parts that influenced those choices. Oh yeah, so let's talk more about you, Jay, because you are taking time out of your day. Jay, what's your favorite Avatar song now? Asks Laurana.
That's a tough question. I think it's probably a new song that no one's heard yet on the new album, A Secret Door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think before that though, it was probably Statue of the King.
All right. In both cases, and feel free, we can talk about new songs all we want. As what was it about A Secret Door that makes you pick it?
I love it because it encompasses everything that you do as a band. It's heavy, it's mellow, you're singing, you're screaming. It's the music is really unique and cool, and it's just a really cool song. I love the riff, which everyone will hear eventually. And Avatar always has kick-ass riffs, so it just has everything. It's just one of those songs that has everything.
And still is built of so fairly few building blocks, which that is, there's something very nice about putting together an epic that takes all kinds of turns musically and stuff. And A Secret Door kind of does that very much so, like it's very dynamic, but still it's built on, there are a few themes that went into that, and just they kind of lock into each other. There are one melody used as riff and as chorus, but with different harmony underneath, and the riff harmony is being used in the verse, so they all connect like that. I was very pleased with that part of it.
Yeah, so that song turned out really amazing, and the band played amazing, and it's just, yeah, I love the riff. It's a very simple riff, which are the best riffs.
Mm. Mona asks, how are the Huskies doing? Let's clarify that it's not your Huskies.
No, they're the studio where we record Sphere. He has two Huskies. He had two other Huskies. Well, actually, one of them was still there, but one of the two passed away, and then he got another one. But they're doing great, as far as I know.
Yeah, they're lovely fellas. So, username was Craven. We know your real name. Ciao, Marco, come stai? They wonder when, well, this is for both of us, but it's formulated towards me, but this goes for both of us. When you and the producer decide that the work is really finished in the studio, when do we decide that we really are finished? I mean, when you both are satisfied, or what we just recorded.
I think, at least for you and I, when we were together in Helsinki recording, we would spend a couple hours doing verses and choruses and trying different ideas and stuff. And most of it you had written, so there wasn't a ton of experimentation, except in spots where you decided yourself, hey, I'm going to rewrite this lyric, or this isn't quite working. And sometimes that happens when you're in front of the microphone. And then you came in the control room and we would listen. And I think there's always that moment where we both just kind of look at each other and go, yeah, that's great. You know, there's nothing either that's bothering either of us. We love it. You know, I think that's a pretty mutual feeling.
Yeah, and it works when you have once you figure out what you want to achieve, then it's easier to find that, you know, point when you feel finished with a recording. Then it's a bigger challenge. We had songs where we had another song people will hear soon enough. Child had, I don't know how many different verses, that we tried so many different melodies and, well, guitar arrangements and stuff as well, but it's really boiled down to, felt like millions of different melodies, and we kind of knew what we were, you know, with that chorus and stuff was kind of evident what the ultimate package was supposed to be, but the role the verse had to play in that whole in the song made it that I find it more challenging with something like that as opposed to, I don't know, like a secret door. A secret door, all the parts were already in place writing wise, and we knew what it was supposed to feel like all the way, I guess.
Yeah,
So
I think with
then
a couple songs that we definitely had a little question mark over a couple spots. You're right, and that was Child was one of them.
Definitely.
And yeah.
Johannes' question is also first and foremost aimed for me, but I have a follow-up on that I want to throw your way. Because is there any song that has been taking years to complete for an album? And yes, 100%. For me, it's pretty common. There's a song called Gun that I started working on, I think, in 2013. The main riff of Silence and Age of Apes is older than that. And it's something us in the whole band do. Like, I don't remember which riff it is now, but I remember saying like, oh, that's just something I came up with, you know, when I was 18. You know, that is a reoccurring thing, that the seeds of certain songs can be planted very early. And sometimes they're just, you know, riffs lying around, but then there are songs actually been trying to write and finish for a long time. And the song Gun on Hunter Gatherer was one of those. But you have worked with way more artists than I have. Is this common?
Very common. Yeah. I mean, I just recorded a record where one of the songs was written 12 years ago, and he just was sitting on it waiting for the right time. So, and the right time happened to be now, and it's great. And it sounds like he wrote it yesterday. So I think a good song is a good song is a good song. That's a saying that, you know, kind of goes throughout the music industry, is, you know, it doesn't really matter when it's just acoustic guitar and vocals. In the end, the production will be with the times, and or be hopefully timeless, you know, which is also a goal. You don't want to listen to a record and go, oh yeah, that was recorded in 1987, like you would with all the hair metal. Instantly hear the snare drum, you know.
Yeah.
So,
but I feel that it started to come full circle at some point when, you know, you had it. Oh, it's been 20 years already. Now it's been 30 years, I guess. But you know, it's been, at some point it was 20 years, and it comes back being retro in fashion. And hey, remember this sound? And now it's almost, now it feels less dated than it did 15 years ago. You know what I mean?
Well, it's technology. Technology came into the picture. Oh, we can do this to the drums. Oh, we can do that to the guitars. Oh, so people just take advantage of new technology, and a lot of keyboards and different sounds that people are using now, overusing, will be looked at that same way.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, once it gets old enough, it starts to sound less dated suddenly, is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, well, I don't really have an issue with it if the songs were great. And, you know, I'm not people go back and remix records sometimes, and I only would suggest doing that if the original mix was just really bad. And there's a couple instances, like Mark Lewis remixed the Megadeth album Killing Is My Business, and I think he did a great job. The new mix is fantastic, and it just made it sound better. One that I disagree with was Pearl Jam's 10, which sold 10 million copies just here in America alone. And it was a brilliantly produced album and mixed by a British guy named Tim Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim is big in Helsinki because he did a lot of the hymn records. But he came from an earlier era. Late 80s, he did Robert Plant and then Pearl Jam. And in the 90s, he did a lot of Seattle kind of grunge bands. And for some reason, Pearl Jam was never happy with that mix. I don't know if they thought it was too reverby or something, but I thought it captured the vibe of the time perfectly, and it's a brilliant record. So they went back in the mid to late 2000s and remixed it with their new producer, Brendan O'Brien, who made it very dry and kind of thumpy sounding. And to me, it just lost all the magic that it had and is unlistenable. And that's not really his fault. That's what they asked him to do. So I just disagreed with that and thought that, well, there was nothing wrong with the original version. So it can kind of go both ways.
Yeah, definitely. But the artists, we are the ones who probably know the most and the least of what our songs mean. There's definitely a death of the author problem there going on at some point where, if once it's out, you should probably we shouldn't George Lucas our stuff, is my general opinion on this.
Yeah. Again, if it sounds absolutely horrible and you didn't have the budget at the time, but there's something magical there, sure, give it a shot. But otherwise, don't mess with it.
Okay, username Johannes voice OMG. Well, questions are: what was the easiest to make of all your albums, or the most intense or physically and emotionally draining? Or did making it let you release some of that built up frustration? So I guess what was the hardest album to make and the easiest? And if I go first, I think in a way Avatar different stages of a process can be hard for different reasons. Our third album, we were going through so much personally and growing pains creatively with that one, and musically I was learning so much, and we were really redefining what we were as a band, that writing that was really tough and challenging, and almost depressed us at times, and was a necessary thing to do. Recording it, I don't have that traumatic experiences from. Recording hardest was, I think, The Feathers and Flesh, because it's a 1 hour concept album with 1,000 stuff going on. You mixed that one. You got all those channels of garden hoses and stuff. Yeah. And to just put that together, all of it made it just so intense. We were running against the clock all the time. And we did that on occasion on Hunter Gatherer, and towards the end, the last day, we vocals was intense and stuff. But all in all, I think Hunter Gatherer was exactly as hard as an album should be to make.
Yeah, it had its easy moments, and it went very smoothly overall. There was a couple of hiccups, as there always is. There was a couple songs we struggled with and worked on a little more than others, but that's just a normal album process. There was never tornado or anything,
No, it never stopped us in our tracks, I feel. I think we were all at a state of mind where we were very accepting of the fact that this is going to be, this is, okay, this is one of those. That's fine. Again, the whole hunter-gatherer experience was all about, for me at least, trusting the process. We reached that point now where, okay, this is happening now. This happened before. That's fine. We'll just work through it and focus on, where we're heading, and accepting that the trip there is what it is, and it's fine. Yeah. How about with other artists in your case? Which do you have any particularly smooth or particularly challenging recordings that comes to mind?
It depends. It's the challenging ones are usually when the band can't be together. They live in different cities, and you get that a little more with some of the older bands that have families and children and stuff, and they just kind of go separate ways in their personal lives. So then when they come back together to make a record, people haven't played together much. They have spent a couple months or a few months since they've been on tour. So that can be a challenge because then you're kind of like, working the kinks out and just kind of getting everybody back into shape. And then you add the travel issue into it. Everybody's coming from different places. And where do you record then? Like, do you record where, two of the members live, but three of the other people live somewhere else? And, it's a lot of just that kind of boring technical stuff that can put a wrench in a record. But I can't really recall being in a studio and just having an absolutely train wreck disaster record in the last 15 years or so, because just the state of mind of Los Angeles. Everybody's here to be successful and bring their best, you would hope. It happened a lot when I was younger, first engineering, and bands walking in the studio never ever having made a record, and drummer can't play, or bass player doesn't know how to tune his instrument. And there was a lot of that, of course, in my younger years. But once I got to a level where I was picking and choosing who I was working with, it was pretty rare, because I would steer clear of something that I saw could maybe be a train wreck or might have some issues. And every record has problems and issues, but it's usually very workable.
Yeah, because making a record is life. You take
Yeah.
you take a month out of your life at the to, and so everything about life goes into that for that specific period.
And I've walked into records knowing, okay, the guitar player, he's not the tightest, so I'll be focusing on him the most, or the drummer, or the singer. Sometimes I know that ahead of time, or sometimes it becomes a total surprise in the studio. I'm like, oh, okay, you struggle with this. All right, well, let's work on that. Let's figure out how to help you do that better, or whatever. And, it just, or people get into bad habits. I've worked with amazing musicians who just picked up bad habits live, not muting strings correctly, or hitting cymbals too hard, or, just figuring out those little things.
How many times have you been food poisoned in the studio?
Twice.
Once in Helsinki.
Once in Helsinki. It wasn't in the studio. It was just my own dumb luck. But yeah, once about 10 years ago, bad pizza or something. But yeah, and this WoW is vegan too, so I guess it can happen.
It's clearly, sadly, I always use that as one of the arguments where that impossible. Well,
certainly can happen.
McNichols. Oh, that's nice, easy to pronounce username. I love that a fellow Canadian is working with you guys. Johannes, how has it changed the band being more and more exposed to other cultures as you grow? I don't know if I'm being, we travel, the bigger you get, the more you get to travel, I guess. And if you take your time, you get to dig into things. I don't think it has changed the band or dramatically, because our curiosity for other cultures and interest in other cultures, specifically from a musical standpoint, was there anyway, and I haven't gotten a chance to go to Mongolia and learn to play their folk instruments, so nothing that dramatic has happened. It just confirms again that metal as a subculture transcends and integrates extremely well with any other culture that I've experienced, where you find that great connection wherever you go. And that is the nature of metal, that the foundation of what metal music is, dark, heavy, aggressive. You can marry that with so many other things, and different, and you can kind of get a taste of whatever melodies people grew up on aside from metal music, how that marriage happens. There's how Southern rock was invented in the Southern US makes perfect sense,
Mm-hmm.
and how different types of folk music or whatever is popular in a region kind of influences the way the metal sounds. But yeah, you also, in your position, I guess, you work with, you have an international clientele. Anything that you pick up along the way from working so internationally?
Yeah, I mean, I get a history lesson, which is great, like working with you and Amanamarth. singers especially, because they write lyrics and they have an excellent grasp of the English language. So, you know, I learned more about Scandinavian history from you and Johan from Amanamarth than I had, you know, basically all through high school. So, you know, that's kind of cool. I like learning stuff. I like learning about Vikings and Molotov cocktails and stuff like that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
history lessons. So that's actually really fun. And you know, I've worked with bands from Japan and South America and all over Europe, of course. I was actually kind of thinking when he asked that question about you guys, is there a country where Avatar is really popular that surprised you?
And a place that we are really popular that surprised me.
Yeah, certain bands are really big in certain countries, and there's really no explanation to it. It just happened.
Ah, well, yeah, like I find it crazy when I see we haven't toured there as much as we haven't toured at all in places, and still we see in social media. Now we got to confirm. Now I learned how to check, you know, more detailed stats on views and streams and all that. And Mexico, you know, start in Mexico and then travel further south through Central and South America, and there's such a our music seems to be very very present there in
Mm.
a way that, and we never gotten, we played in Mexico once, we of course want to go, and now more than ever when it's confirmed that yeah, it's not just a handful of people on our social medias, you know, it's it really are, there really are a whole lot of people there listening. And we saw similar pattern. Ukraine was another place like that, where the only festival we got booked for, I lost my passport, so we had to cancel. And then we were supposed to do it this year, and here we are in this COVID, you know, and everything's falling apart. And you know, we'll still make up for missing out last time. But yeah, so those are South and Central America and Mexico. Mexico is part of North America, just so people know that. Those places are like that for sure. And then just the other week I saw, oh, Ukraine, there you go. So
Mm.
that happens all the time. Like
The
you
South
say.
America thing, that does not surprise me because obviously metal's very big down there, and
Mhm.
you know, bands have been going down there for decades and playing, of course, Rock in Rio and all these kind of
Mm.
festivals. Um, so that doesn't surprise me, but the fact that you haven't been there or played in, you know, Chile or Argentina or any place like that is impressive that you're seeing big numbers.
Yeah. X1 Fiction N3X. Feels like I just read someone's password. Uh, Jay, what is your favorite aspect of producing?
I think when a band first sends me demos and I hear the start of a great song, that's probably my favorite part, because after that it's a process. As we always say, trust the process.
Mm.
Things just start happening. People work on their parts, we make suggestions, but you can't replace that initial feeling when I get that email from you saying, hey, I just sent you a new demo, or there's a new demo in the Dropbox.
Mm.
So that's always exciting. And then especially for this album, when we got together a year and a half before, knowing it was going to be a
Was it
year.
that long?
I think so, yeah. It was like November
Whoa.
of 2018, I think we got together the first time. So maybe
Yeah,
not quite,
that's right.
but
Yeah.
a year and a couple months at least anyway, or maybe like end of the
Mm.
summer 2018. So, and you guys were playing me little snippets of ideas and immediately getting excited. That's the best part, because I knew right
Mm.
then and there, 10 minutes into our hanging out here at the studio, that it was going to be a great record. There was just no doubt.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah, I agree. I love the whole process, but there's something to be said about that initial first spark, you know, when all the possibilities of what something can become is opening up, and you know, and then there's also right at the end when it's like, and here it is.
Mixed, yeah, that's the other
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Or even fourth mix when we were done in Helsinki, just listening to everything,
Mm.
and John joined us, and you know, that was definitely a fun day. And you know, even though we were banging, trying to get everything done, and there's always the last minute few little bits. That's definitely a magical moment and a fun day. But the end.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the beginning and the end. I like, but I'm also partial to. I enjoy the middle as well. So Laurana again asks, Jay, is there anything that makes Avatar different from other bands you produced or mixed?
A lot of things. The there's a how do I guess it's a democratic process. You guys all listen to each other and respect each other's opinion, and you don't always see that. Sometimes there might be one or two people in the band that kind of make all the decisions, and that's just the way it is, and the whole band's okay with it, or they're not okay with it. And bands can be, complicated mess of emotions and egos and infighting, and it's just something that happens. And you guys have a very calm way of dealing with that and listening to each other, which is pretty unique. And other bands listen to each other too, but not to the extent that you guys do. I feel like there's a full 100% respect between the five of you, and everybody's thoughts and ideas on something is just as important. And I think that that's what makes it makes a better record, to be honest, because everybody's included and feels included. And maybe one person wrote the song, or brought the bulk of the idea for the song, but everybody's ideas are being heard.
Yeah.
So that's good. And then, of course, musicianship. Everybody in the band is top notch. You don't always get that. Sometimes there's a couple top notch and a couple not quite. And so that makes recording challenging sometimes, or playing live challenging. You get away with a lot more live, obviously, but the fact that you guys can all play great in the studio makes that job very easy. So that's nice, and it made the record go very smoothly because everybody came so prepared. And just I think it's a general attitude that the whole band has about making art, making something that you love, and just hoping everybody else loves it too. Not intentionally making something you think everybody will love. You're making something that you love.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think the democratic thing and what we have nurtured that through so many years now. And I think ultimately there is that magic with us that I am particularly proud of. Like you said, like a bulk of a song or all of a song can be written by any one of us. But what happens is once it enters the process of us, working it together as a band, everyone, the way we show appreciation and interest in what someone else in the band is doing is that we claim ownership of it, and then it belongs to everyone.
Yeah.
My lyrics belongs to Henrik as much as Henrik's bass lines belong to me, that sense. And it's something that we are doing. And for that matter, then that's lyrical suggestions, title suggestions, anything can come from anyone else anyway. There's no hard set rules that the lyrics are mine. I actually think it's thanks to Henrik that Colossus is named Colossus, for instance. Mm-hmm. Hey, another song title that you're gonna hear soon, people. And
changed.
Yeah, exactly. It went back and forth for quite some time, and I was looking for something else because I hated what what it was called, while at the same time what it was called made the most sense for the longest time until it became Colossus. And we have Henrik to thank for that, for instance. And in the same way, I have probably moved a note or two of some bass line on this album, and that goes around with the whole band. Jay, what took longer to produce, Avatar Country or Hunter Gatherer? I feel like we answered this in a way.
Longer, I think it was actually about the same amount of time, to be honest. I think for Avatar Country, I came to Gothenburg for about 2.5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then you guys did some more overdubs without me, just like some background things. And they did the guitar solos on their own with Pedro. So it was probably about 3.5 weeks total of recording, and then of course the mixing process. And I think Hunter Gatherer we did 3 weeks in Burbank, about 20 days, right? So not quite 3 weeks. And then of course you guys did a few background vocals in Gothenburg as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the actual time was about the same.
Yeah, I guess it just feels so different for me because Hunt Together, we had way more time to write it. And if I include that to the production process and also meaning the amount of time we got to spend with you, we went to, yeah, the room you're sitting in a couple of times, but then
Mhm.
also over the internet to talk about things as they were written. In that sense, Hunter Gatherer clearly took longer, had more time on it.
If you add, yeah, if you add in the songwriting and pre-production, way longer. But the
Mm.
actual recording process, when the band's ready and professional, it should take 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm. I should also have mentioned that that was asked by Art Fizziness. A question from where was it? Sorry, I lost it. Stay with. Oh my God, dead air, dead air. Uh, so Nessie Snail asks ask you, was it more challenging to produce this new record as it was played live? Is it more challenging with live recordings?
It is if the band can't play,
Mm-hmm.
which I've also done, and it just creates basically what you do then is if the drum take is good, we would go back and fix bass and guitars and things. But I would say no, because a couple other recent metal records I've made have been made the other way, where we get a drum track and then we go back and totally redo the bass, redo the guitars. Then you end up focusing much more clinically on each instrument, each section of the song, making everything absolutely perfect. Whereas when you record live and everybody's playing together, the perfection comes from the feel. The feel. So if you listen to a guitar by itself, yeah, there might be a muffed chord or a missed string or a fret noise, but when it's all in the big picture, it doesn't matter because it all moved together.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you don't get that when you do it piecemeal, one at a time. You end up on a grid, on a metronome, making everything perfect, basically. It's just sort of
But it's just
unavoidable.
an arbitrary description of perfect. It's just slightly different organized noises than the other way, and it's just something that looks neat on paper, and then it
It's
becomes like this chakra tuning of guitars, weird space frequencies that looks nice when you look at the numbers but doesn't sound good. Is
right.
perfect is such a weird way to describe something so subjective as songs to me.
Of
And like
course.
you said, like just move that everyone moves together. I guess that is why I want to do live albums. That's the whole point of it, that it's become this living breathing thing that, yeah, a fret noise is remove something from it, but everything that's added into it, and just the sense of urgency in the music, I guess, that you
Yeah.
can't have otherwise.
Well, and also with when you record live, you can choose or not choose to use or choose not to use a metronome. Um,
Mm.
when you don't use a metronome, the drummer is the guide and the band is joining in. Your overdub process or adding instruments on top changes slightly because there's no timing guide, having that
Mm.
metronome. When you record everything one instrument at a time, you pretty much have to record to a metronome. So when you go to add the new instruments, you have a timing reference. If there's breaks in the song when the drums stop, things like that. So,
One important factor also with recording live, that if you would start, this album with just having John there, not a chance that we could have the rewrites and try things and experiment with the songs as much as we actually did in the studio. It lengthens the creative process
yes,
and
we,
gives, therefore there are so many songs that needs some things you ponder on, like we said, for like 10 years, and some things just you need to create moments where things are just allowed to happen to reach a certain point. And the studio is the best place to do that, to have these ideas, but they can be slightly disorganized, but you're there playing together and you work it out that way.
Well, and the band made decisions together as a unit rather than, oh, well, the drums are done. We have to work on something that will work over that drum beat. Well, now you're all doing it together. John can adjust his part, or Henrik can adjust his part, and it's just so much better.
Exactly. Chris KC wants me to talk about the Sounds of Age of Apes, the meaning of that song. And I'm also informed that general peoples are wondering about the music video and the meaning of that. So Silence at the Age of Apes, I think, is a great summary of this, of the album at large, or a very big chunk of what the whole point of a lot of the songs. The red thread, I guess, is the term I'm looking for. And that, yes, we are in the age of apes, meaning that we are some kind of, top of the food chain animal at the time that we're around here. And in terms of the kind of progress that I would like to see, and most of us probably would like to see in how our society, our civilization evolves, in the grand scheme of things, we're not making much noise in the right direction. Or at least that is what is expressed in the song. And it's also tied to a general idea of, for me, how I'm trying to think of a brief way to say all this. The reason it talks so much about acceleration is that whatever needs to get done to ensure our survival and for us to thrive, and all of us to thrive in this world, needs to happen fast. We need to speed up and we need to accelerate. However, that kind of acceleration that we need is also the kind of acceleration that might lead us to our ultimate doom, and we are on this razor thin edge balancing, and not sure on which side we will fall. And whatever is happening and whatever needs to happen or shouldn't happen, it's all going faster and faster. So a lot is happening, yet nothing is happening, and that's Silence in Age of Apes. And the music video adds the layer of the struggle with your inner self and whatever you try to suppress within you. I am playing the role in the music video of whatever the other guys are trying to suffocate within them, and then subconsciously they be always confronted with whatever it is they try to hide from themselves and hide from the world. And that's why this primal creature in form of an ape is confronting them with, hey, this is what you hide within you. You can't deny it. And by denying parts of yourself, you're ultimately just hurting and killing yourself. Hello, Spike. Spike's moving.
Uh-oh. I may have to run outside for a second. We'll see.
Well, if you need to, I will go back and dwell more on the Sounds in Age of Apes in that case. You think you can take a question?
30 seconds.
Okay, I'll keep talking about Silence.
All right.
No, so that's all. So we did a music video that was that put a personal layer on a song that in a structure of focus on a societal situation. But I always feel like those go hand in hand. Psychology and politics, like it's just different layers of trying to solve very similar problems to me. Figure out a good life, I guess. And we do what we do on a microscopic personal level also happens in this macro grand scope. It's always connected. The fight between good and evil is being fought on every level at the same time. So therefore, Sounds in Age of Ape, the music video, became something that's focused more on individuals and personal psychology. And again, like the things you don't want to address are the things that ultimately will be the most harmful to you. And if that is pollution and islands made out of trash and whatever, or if it's just whatever you are trying to deny that is part of who you are, and you don't want to face that and deal with that. It's very similar in my perspective. And I guess Jay got behind that door that Jay ran through is his bathroom. There's also a shower in there, so maybe he's taking a shower. In that case, I still have to speak even longer about Silence in the Age of Apes. Question for me from Lady Mona. My 12-year-old wants to know what is a good age to learn to growl. Uh, any age. You can start right now. I've heard multiple 12-year-olds do a great job. What you need to understand, I think, or what helps is that all kinds of singing is connected to each other. And there's a saying of it's, if you have to learn how to crawl before you learn to walk, before you learn to run, something like that. And just, dude, sing and learn to sing, and learn to sing in a way that it doesn't hurt you when you do crazier and crazier stuff. Learn to breathe the right way. Find a teacher if you can, or otherwise Google is your friend, and you can find a lot of advice online and just practice. It's all connected, but you can definitely start working on your growls at the age of 12, no problem. Just don't hurt your voice too much. Did you wash your hands? Did you wipe well?
Yes, I had to wash my hands. He's old, so yeah, there's a bit of
Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. For Laura, 428. Gonna check. Yeah, we have time for a couple more. Jay, do you find it easier to work with bands that you never worked with before, or those with whom you developed a friendship/relationship?
Oh, I think it's definitely easier when we know each other a little better. Even if you've had some phone conversations or some Zoom conversations is helpful beforehand, because I've walked in the studio cold before with a band where it's only been maybe over email or telephone, and it can take a few days sometimes to break that ice and get everybody comfortable, figure out people's personalities, and if you can be really kind of harsh and upfront with somebody, or if you need to have, well, I guess, a little softer approach. It just depends. So it's definitely easier when you know them and you've got a bit of history, absolutely. But then the other side of that is if you've made a bunch of records with them, they can kind of expect what you're going to say and vice versa. So it's hard to keep it fresh and not just sort of throw away somebody's idea because you're used to their thought process.
Is there I guess to put an actual number would be arbitrary, but I imagine that there could be a top number of when maybe it's time to to swap partners with each other. Not to like. I think you want to get to know each other, and because I feel like the process of working with a producer is this process of opening up for each other, and I feel knowing each other helps, but part of the process is to get to know each other. At least the way I perceive it, and that means, do you think there is a top number of albums or projects you can do together, and where it might stop being fruitful?
I don't know. It hasn't happened to me yet. And a lot of artists I work with, I've done multiple albums. I've got 5 albums with Steel Panther. I've got 3 with Anthrax. We're up to 4. So far, so good with all those artists. So I guess eventually it might happen. And I know there are bands out there that worked with the same producer for many years, and then at some point made a change. I know Rush made about 10 records with Terry Brown, and then they used a different producer on every record almost for 10 more years. So I think I think it's more the artist's decision, to be honest. And if I feel like I can't add something to a band anymore, I'll tell them, and they've insisted that I still be involved. So then that's great. So be it. But if an artist came to me and said, look, we're going to try somebody else, I'm totally fine with that, because that's their decision and their art, and they want to see if somebody else will bring something to the table that maybe I don't. And in the past, that did happen once, and then they came back to me to mix it. And they liked what the producer did, but they didn't like the mix. So I ended up back with them anyway. So it was just part of the process.
Yeah, I have 2 last questions now. And obviously, we will not be able to get to all of them because, it's as opposed to me sitting here in a late Eastern European evening. It's way earlier over in LA, and Jay has a life and like 47 dogs.
I do have a
Not
lot
to
of
mention not to mention the wife. Yeah, Jay adopts dogs. He saves them. So, what do you prefer? What is more challenging? Sorry, this question comes from Carpe Brachem. Carpe Brachem. What do you prefer? What is more challenging? Mixing your own productions or someone else's?
I actually think mixing my own is more challenging because you end up second guessing or critiquing yourself a lot harder. If somebody else sends me a record that's already done, I can immediately hear what I want to change or tweak or fix on the sound. So I think it's actually easier coming in not really having heard it.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I know also still to this day with songs that we have in our repertoire since years, it's weird. You have every version of a song in the head at the same time. Take Smells Like a Freak Show. I still remember the sound of I hear the sound of the demo, the album, the radio edit, what it sounds like in my in-ears when we play it, the YouTube clip of it, everything goes on at once. So that you keep adding and stacking up to that. Also in the studio while recording, you have the instrumental, vocals added, then you have the early mix drafts and everything, and you have zero distance to it, or it's very hard to maintain any kind of distance. So yeah. I imagine, like you said, when something gets delivered to you, you can much quicker hear it for what it is.
Yeah, you have an immediate objectivity, which is why also when we finished Hunter Gatherer in mid-January, I waited almost 3 weeks to start mixing it because I wanted that separation, and it really helped. Then when I went back to it, I was like, oh, that's cool. I like what we did there, and okay, I'm going to tweak this a little bit, but it was actually really good clarity.
You have to have that also. Like, again, that's another thing with us having had a long process this time. Part of that is not that you get to work more on something, is that you for periods get to work less actively on things. Again, creating distance to your work is I guess is very important to have that intimacy you spend the rest of the time having with it. Makes sense. People are very happy that you are not so nice and save dogs. Princess Raven Wine writes, "Yay, Jay." Thanks. Which is hard to pronounce for a Swede. Yay, Jay. Thank you for saving dogs. Heart. Nessie Snail says, "Jay, you are great." Last question. If I find it. There. Kitty Child asks, will you work together again?
That's a question for you, because for me, that's 100% yes. I love Avatar. I love working with Avatar in any capacity. Even if you said to me right now, well, we're going to go work with somebody else, but we want you to mix it. Okay, great. I'm still involved. I don't get precious about that kind of stuff. But if I get to produce the next Avatar record, that would make me happy.
Cool. As you mentioned, we need a driver.
Bus driver. Yeah, that's my other job.
No, I think my take on it is, my answer is yes. I haven't discussed this with the band. It's very important for me to, in one way or another, tweak and just change things around enough with each album so there's some aspect of it where I get to feel like a beginner. And yes, that would mean a third album together. But I think there's still something to be taken from that well. And I, like you do, I already have ideas of how to make the next one feel like we're doing something new again, where we're not exactly sure of what we're doing. Well, sometimes it means
the last album feels so different. They're like very different records.
Yeah, by design, because that is what we like to do. And also just the setting, to fly over some dude from LA to countryside Sweden. There's a cow. There's the Neve console. Now get to work. And then going into LA, putting on sunglasses indoors and say, let's make a motherfucking album in LA. Change things up. And I'm sure we can change things up while still keeping the producer.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when you have that relationship and, like you said, getting to know somebody, spending 2 weeks or a little more than 2 weeks with you in Helsinki, everything changed. Like you know someone better when you spend that much time with them. And even the whole band, like, yes, we spent 3 weeks together making Avatar Country, but it's still not enough time to actually know someone, especially when it's mostly working and mostly people in the band telling me what they want, me telling them what I'm trying to get out of them. You're not
Mm,
becoming friends or getting to know somebody that way. You're just working. So
mm,
when you have a little more free time together, like us riding the train home every night or taking the
mm,
ferry,
mm.
you talk about things in the world. And I think that helps too. It just, you get inside somebody's head.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I know you have to go, and so we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And for all of you guys watching, all our beloved citizens on avatarcountry.com. I don't know why I plugged the page address. You're already on it, people. But thank you so much for supporting what we do. And I hope this was a decent way for us to show our gratitude and appreciation of it. And we have way more things like this. Things there's more to come. We're gonna make more of these in different versions. But for the time being, thank you so much, Jay. It was a lot of fun. It's great seeing you again.
Yeah, it's been a few months, so it was really fun, and it's always good to catch up and talk about the album that I can't wait for everybody to hear. So, and what's the official release date?
Oh, very good, Jay. August 7th. August 7th, it's actually out. I have 2 vinyl test prints in my living room.
Me too.
I need to fix the vinyl player though. But
Me
if
too.
nothing else, if nothing else, the eBay on those in 20 years, it's gonna be good. There's my
$10.
retirement fund. Yeah. Well, again, I'm gonna let you go. Go and take care of Spike and the rest of your pack. Say hello to your missus and wash your hands.